You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 66, Stay Relevant with Dr. Michelle Fritsch. Welcome to episode 66 of the podcast. I absolutely love today's brave girl, Dr. Michelle Fritsch, a board-certified geriatric clinical pharmacist and former academic that has a passion for healthy aging and education. She's an absolute wealth of knowledge in a number of areas to include today's healthcare system, prescription medication use in people over 60, the aging process, disease, and planning for your golden years. Highly educated and accomplished, Dr. Fritsch shares why we all need to stay relevant in whatever field of work we pursue. It's not a surprise that she's a nationally recognized expert in health at retirement and beyond. Dr. Fritsch has a passion around educating her clients and their caregivers on a holistic approach to health and wellness and is a great advocate for her patients. Her one company, Meds MASH, focuses on medication management, safety assessments, and healthcare coaching. She believes that a fragmented healthcare system is hindering a holistic approach, but we're getting closer to bringing all of the data together in one place. She also shares how with today's technology, she can work with her clients virtually on a secure video portal and how she effectively has been able to collaborate across time zones and geographies. If you have caregiving responsibility for an aging parent, this is a great option. On the show, Dr. Michelle also shares some of the market research that she's done around baby boomers, the retirement landscape, and why executive men are struggling the most with the transition. Her other company, Retirement Wellness Strategies, provides strategic planning for these clients that includes help navigating the major life transition of retirement. The focus is on health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. Working with estate lawyers and financial planners, she's often brought in as part of the team to support families preparing for the transition. We also talk about how important it is to enjoy your life in new ways as you approach retirement and why you need a plan. I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say that the world is a better place for having people like Dr. Michelle Fritsch sharing her gifts, talents, and know-how as we all plan on aging more gracefully. So let's go and listen to episode 66 of Brave Girls with Tracy M.
So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Today, I have the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Michelle Fritsch, who is a board-certified geriatric clinical pharmacist who has a passion for healthy aging and education. And she is a specialist in medication use in people over 60. And she's just got a wealth of knowledge in the health and wellness space. And I just want to say welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So you are out there doing incredible things in many venues. To talk a little bit about kind of what you thought you were going to be doing and how you got into pharmacy and healthcare, and specifically what kind of led you to dealing with sort of this older population who may have, not know really how to navigate, some of the risks that they may have as they age.
It's a great question. I think a big piece of it was I was blessed to grow up with 4 grandparents and 2 great-grandparents. And so I was very comfortable with an older population. And I also saw some of the things that they went through. So during pharmacy school, I just fell in love with geriatrics, did my postdoctoral training in that area, and have pursued practices in all sorts of different settings, but all in that older adult population.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And, I think there's some statistic that 10 million Americans turn 65 every single day. So
it's a huge number. Yes.
Yeah, and so as more of us are moving in that direction, what are some of the things that you have found, when you're working with people or you're advising people, sort of in terms of, aging with grace and dignity and not being over medicated and things of that nature?
I find that it's what everybody wants, and few people know how to navigate that, how to reach that goal. And I think at the crux of it is not knowing always the right questions to ask and having a healthcare team with the best of intentions, but without all of the information that they need. And so just the pieces are not talking to each other as much as they should. And so that's why I found that I can make the biggest impact, actually, is being that communication hub, if you will, between all the key players.
Yeah, and then how much of the medication or the prescriptions that people have been dealt, how much of that plays into it? I know with my dad, he was over medicated until I sort of got really into the weeds of what is going on, why is he on this med, why is he on this dosage, can we fix this through food and exercise, things of that nature.
And that's exactly where the focus needs to be. There are a few different pieces there. A big part of my leaving academia to start my practice, my business, was that I would be in the healthcare system and see so many people laying in a hospital bed and know if I could get just a tiny bit in front of that, it could have been prevented. Sometimes hours, sometimes a few weeks, but a little ways ahead of that, it didn't need to happen. And I found that at least 80% of the time, medications were involved. They might not have been the sole reason for the event that led them to the hospital, but they had a big part to play. And a piece of that is that as we age, our bodies change, and all of us a little bit differently, right? Based on our genetics and based on how we've lived our life. And as our bodies change, the medications that work best for us and the doses that are most appropriate change. And sometimes healthcare is moving so fast that the doses don't change as we change. And so that's one of the biggest areas to make some adjustments to keep people safer.
Yeah. So say a family comes to you and has a loved one and they want you to kind of be their person. What is it what are some of the first things that you do with them? Do you look at all their meds, look at all their records, that kind of stuff?
Well, I think the very first thing is, what are they noticing, and kind of a timeline, and what are their goals? Especially on the behalf of the person who's experiencing the decline, what do they want to be doing right now? And then we delve into what's going on, not only medications, but what are the diagnoses that have been made? And a big piece of it is there's so many things that people can choose on their own, medications as well as other types of therapies. And so I want that whole picture of everything that they're doing and how they're doing it, because when the doctor is sitting in the doctor's office, they don't have the advantage of that deep dive. And so if I can gather that and summarize it and then share it with the doctor, and we can collaborate on how to make some positive changes, that's when the outcomes are the best. And I can give you stories of dramatic outcomes.
Yeah, give us one example of somebody recently that you've worked with and seen just by doing a few things here and there and having that whole picture.
This is the most dramatic one of the last couple of years, and it's close to my heart right now. This is a gentleman, not a lot of family in the area, actually no family in the area. And so that can, like you said, you got involved in your dad's care and dealt when you're by yourself, it's harder. And so this gentleman was doing fine and was on the phone one day and all of a sudden forgot what he was talking about, who he was talking to. He had a roommate who called the ambulance with the thought that it was a stroke. Got him to the hospital. They checked him out. It was not a stroke. They didn't know what the reason was. And he was on 3 medicines that can be used for seizures.
Mm-hmm.
The primary care doctor wasn't called. Had he been called, I think this whole thing could have been nipped in the bud and the downward spiral would not have occurred. But that wasn't done. The assumption was made that he had seizures, so the medications were adjusted for a seizure disorder. He was still not clear in his head, not able to really care for himself, and so he was sent to rehabilitation, and he failed rehabilitation because he was still over-medicated. He was sent to assisted living rather than being able to go back home. In assisted living, he laid in his bed. He did not interact with other people. And so I was kind of in a circuitous route. I got to be involved in the case and did the research as to what had happened. And what had happened is his primary care doctor had increased a medicine that he was using for some sciatica, some low back pain, had increased the dose 4 times higher than what it had been, at the same time that another doctor had started another medicine for some tremors. And these 2 medicines kind of kicked in, if you will, the day he was on the telephone. But at this point, it's been a few months, and those sorts of medicines can't just be stopped. They have to be slowly tapered one at a time. So it took a little while to reach the right doctor, get everybody on board, and start the taper, and then it was amazing. Almost day by day or week by week, as those medicines slowly came off, he became more awake and alert. And so then we got him completely back in his mind. Cognitively, he was completely back. But now physically, he hasn't been moving for a few weeks or months. And so then he had to go through physical therapy to get strong again. And now he's back to living at home, driving his car, doing well. Had that not been caught and those medicines not been changed, I think he would have continued on a downhill spiral, probably gotten pneumonia, and not had a very long life. So it's thrilling to watch him back in his own home doing well again.
That's a great story. Now, I guess, is our healthcare system not really set up to have someone like you kind of in the midst of the care? Is that part of what's going on right now?
I find that our healthcare system right now is very reactive. So once you've had the heart attack, once in this case, he had that lapse in memory, then you enter the healthcare system and we start treating kind of from that point forward, because it's difficult, especially without an advocate, for the healthcare system to go back and get the backstory and really know what's going on. And sometimes it's difficult for the family, even when they're there, to know what are those key elements to make sure they're telling the healthcare system. And then it's just moving too fast. Right now, it is moving too fast for most people to feel like they are able to completely tell their story and give all of the important details. It's not the fault of the doctors. I mean, they gave
Right.
so much of their life to become physicians, but the system is moving at an odd pace. I think we're very close to the day when all of someone's data will be available to the doctor so they can see what everybody else is doing. But right at this moment, different systems have these, what they call firewalls,
Right.
that are keeping that data from being shared. So we're getting close, but at this moment, it's still pretty fragmented.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question, is why isn't all this information shared sort of so that you can see the whole picture? Like, wouldn't Dr. A know that Dr. B is prescribing these different things, but then we've got these specialty doctors that are out there. So I think the concept even of having an advocate as you age is probably a newer concept that people don't really know is available.
Right. And there are a number of types of advocates out there. I'm focusing primarily on the health, the inside the healthcare system and the medication use, including all the supplements and vitamins and things that people choose on their own, and putting that picture together. There are people called, used to be called geriatric care managers. Now they're called life care managers. They're amazing advocates to help families identify all of the various resources that might be available.
Right.
And so there are different kinds of advocates with different backgrounds depending on what you're looking for. But I think that's a growing element of our healthcare system because people need help to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yes, definitely. So talk a little bit about the Meds Mash and what that specifically does as opposed to your retirement wellness business, or are they kind of co-related, interconnected?
They're interconnected. They're like sisters, I guess.
Okay.
And so when I started Meds Mash, the whole idea was to be very proactive, catch people before the health decline. What I found was that Meds Mash has a following, but it's mostly the people who find out about it are referring their parents. So most of my Meds Mash clients, most are in their 80s and 90s, which is great. I love to go in and help make sure that those medication regimens are what I call clean, and that doses are appropriate for how their kidneys and liver are doing, and that they're on the least amount of medicines possible. I do love that. But my primary passion is to get in front of all of that and get in the front and catch people while they're still healthy and have them have many, many years of health in front of them by not stumbling into medication problems. And so started doing some market research and found that boomers want nothing to do with anything that says geriatric, older, aging, mature, senior, none of those words. And so then in trying to figure out what common term can we use, retirement, around the time of retirement, whether people actually retire or they just kind of change what they're doing a little bit. Right. And then when I looked into retirement, I found that it's men that are struggling the most with retirement. And in particular, men with a lot of responsibility. So your C-suite and your managers, your business owners, those men are having difficulty navigating that chasm, if you will, of going from being fully responsible for people and business and structure and outcomes to not. Their social structure is primarily in the workplace. Their personal satisfaction is wrapped up in the workplace. And they're spending all of their planning, it seems, on the money and the succession of the business. And so when Monday comes after the big retirement party and no one's calling and the business is carrying on without them, there are a lot of men struggling. And so the suicide rate is going way up, which just breaks my heart. The rapid health decline, like retire and then have a heart attack, and the divorce rate are climbing rapidly. And I think a lot of that is just lack of preparing to stay healthy through that transition. So that's what retirement wellness strategies is all about.
That's great. Yeah, I could see that. You know, if your whole identity is wrapped up in who you are as the CEO or the senior vice president of ... or, you know, chairman of the board and founder ... that would be hard to navigate because these are macho guys. They're not going to admit that they're struggling or that they're having a hard time. So I guess this is just a service that you offer as people are kind of moving into that phase of their life. It's additional support that they may not have anticipated that that's what they need.
Additional support and really strategic planning, because I see health at that point way beyond the physical. It's not your diagnoses and, you know, I don't take any meds. It's not so much that. It's emotionally and mentally. What's your plan? How are you going to maintain your relevance? How are you going to be happy and fulfilled? How are you going to do the activities that you want to do if you've been sitting behind your desk for 40 years? You know, if you want to be physically active, we've got to be smart about this so you don't hurt yourself. And so pulling together all of those, even the spiritual and the social health, we've got to think about what does that look like. In general, and this is a major generality, but in general, women are better at having broader social networks and at sharing their emotions. And so it seems in our society okay for a woman to say, boy, I feel left out, I feel lonely, I feel like I don't matter anymore. from everything I'm gathering, men have fewer options to express their emotions. And there's sort of the anger, rage side, or I'm not happy. And then there's the happy side, and there's the lust part. But this whole I don't know who I am anymore doesn't really have a bucket. And so if it goes to the anger side, that leads to the heart attacks and the suicides. If it goes to the lust side, that leads to the divorces. And so helping men find a healthier way to get through this major life transition, I think ultimately will lead to some great, healthy, fun years ahead rather than these devastating outcomes.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So what are some of the ways that you kind of get in front of these people when they're still healthy? I know you kind of came to me through Christina Snyder, who's a financial planner. So I guess you're well known in sort of those circles as somebody that they can refer their clients to. Is that kind of how people find you? I mean, it's not something that maybe people even know they need to be seeking.
Well, that's the difficult part. I'm trying to engage people in a process that they don't realize they need. And so a lot of it is getting to know who else is engaged in the planning for this population. And so the financial planners and the lawyers who are doing estate planning and that kind of thing, as well as just throughout my career, I've been blessed to get to know a lot of men in higher up positions. And so they are some of my earlier people to reach out to say, hey, you know me and I know what phase of life you're in. How can we work together?
That's great. Yeah, because getting them comfortable with having the conversation about the mental and emotional things that they're going to go through as they try to reshape who they are isn't something that they would probably be out there looking for. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So are you still teaching in sort of different venues?
I am. I was in academia for 28 years and mostly teaching pharmacy students, but I've also taught physicians and nurses and physician assistants. And right now I'm teaching for 2 physical therapy schools. So it just kind of keeps changing, which I really enjoy.
Right. Well, and it keeps you relevant, just like you were saying, maintain your relevance, right? So when you're always, if you're teaching, you've got to stay up on the latest trends, the latest technologies, the latest drugs, as different drugs come into the market. Yeah. So the other question, I know a lot of people as they age face Alzheimer's. Or they have family members that are kind of predispositioned to have Alzheimer's or memory loss or, different cognitive disorders. So talk a little bit about that, because I know there's really no cure. And it's, how can you allow the person to live the best life as they kind of go through that process?
Well, first I have 3 pieces of good news, because it feels like all the Alzheimer's news is bad news. One is if you have a family member or you yourself are having feel like your memory's going, there are several fixable things that are the first things the doctor will look for. And so those can be, maybe you've got a vitamin deficiency, maybe you've got depression that hasn't been treated, maybe you've got some issues with your heart function or your lung function, and that's not allowing adequate oxygen to your brain, but those can be remedied. And so we're looking for those fixable things first. And the other thing is that many, many medications can make it difficult to think clearly. And so we go through a process to the degree it's at all possible, get rid of those medicines so that you have that opportunity to think clearly. For most people, between those 2 things, we've gotten rid of what feels like Alzheimer's. And then if it is Alzheimer's, I think we're learning more and more about it. I agree. The medications currently available are terrible. Very few instances would I even recommend people use them. That's me personally. Mm-hmm. But I think the research is advancing, and there seem to be some things coming up that are linked to Alzheimer's that might lead to more effective therapies. It's not going to help people that are currently there, but hopefully in the next 5 years or so, we'll have some options that actually work. for now, since the medications really are not helpful, it's more about helping the family understand how to navigate and helping the person who's been diagnosed talk about a devastating news and a devastating thing to walk through. And so all of that emotional support is critical. And so for families to have a group come around them and really support them and really help them step by step by step, because everybody's story and picture is different. Mm-hmm. So I would say the Alzheimer's Foundation does an amazing job of that. And I'm finding a growing number of resources of every kind to come alongside families and help them through that.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's so tricky about Alzheimer's is that, like you said, everyone is a little bit different. It's not like some disease progressions, right? So it's different from person to person, and there's those. Well, I think it's 7 stages or something like that. If I have it right, you could stay in stage 1 or whatever, the early stages, for 10 years,
right?
Where you progress, or you could have a rapid decline, and everyone's progression through the situation is totally different based on, I guess, whatever.
Right.
And there's really no rhyme or reason around that. So that's also, I think, what makes it extremely difficult when it gets diagnosed, because you don't know what the journey is going to be like.
Right. It's not like you can say, okay, at this point you take away the car, and at this point you lock the door, and at this point you shut off the stove, and at this point, it's so variable. On a really personal note, my mother's father, from the time we knew he had it until he was gone, was 1.5 years. My father's mother, it was over 12 years. And at the end, she still knew the names of all of my children. So she was a great grandmother and knew her but in her own mind, she was somewhere around 18 or 20 years old. And so, that's how, but her mind didn't try to make sense of that. Both of those things were okay in her world.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so if people want to find you and they want to sort of connect with you, I know one of the things you had said was that you use, they don't have to physically be where you are, that you can do this through with a personal health information, secure video channel to get with you, so that if somebody's listening to everything and they want to do a little research on you and what you have available to them and their particular situation, whether it's for them or for their parents or aunts or uncles or grandparents or whatever stage is most appropriate, talk a little bit about that and how you work with your clients that way.
I love how that's opened opportunities for families to be more engaged in the health of their loved ones, and for people to engage with practitioners that they can't physically drive to. So I love what it's done. So it's completely HIPAA secure, which means that nobody can get in and see your information. And we're able to talk by video. In some cases, if the person isn't tech savvy, then someone else can come in and kind of operate the technology, if you will. But it allows, even, let's say the person is in Wisconsin and their daughter's in California and their son's in Florida, we can all be on together, seeing the same conversation, engaged in the same conversation. You can get the doctor on there, you can get the dietitian on there. So it's just opened opportunities for collaboration that didn't exist. And one of the ways I use it the most, I kind of hinted earlier that if a medicine impacts thinking, then it's important to not just stop it, but to slowly taper it down. Mm-hmm. I've got clients who we can pop on the video, and by asking them certain questions and just kind of observing them, I can figure out whether that dose should stay the same or we're ready to go down a little bit more. And it takes less than 2 minutes, and the clients like it because they laugh. They say, I only have to really get dressed from the waist up. Otherwise, I can have jammies on and no one knows. Rather than drive to the doctor's office and wait your turn and wait in the room to be told, okay, tomorrow go down another half a dose. That seems like wasted time and effort and exposure to infections this time of year.
Right. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think technology has kind of leveled the playing field and opened up so many opportunities. Even like this, me being able to Zoom with you and do the audio and then put it out into the interwebs, and it's touching people in 29 countries, right? Who They may not be in the U.S. but people are aging all around the world, and something that you said may just really resonate with them and really spark them to take action.
Right.
I really like people to take action after I've had conversations with my guests, and to really ponder and think about, different situations. And so, the final question that I always ask every guest is, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I think the bravest thing I've ever done is actually to launch this business. And that's based on brave things that have been opportunities in the past, right? With it start to build some confidence, it's going to turn out okay.
Yeah.
But pharmacists are not necessarily known for being out of the box thinkers, if you will. And so to take this leap of faith and to say healthcare is not where I want it to be, I think I can develop a model that is more proactive. It has been a thrilling adventure. And along the way, I have met so many wonderful people who've done similar things and are there to kind of coach and enable and support each other as we go through this.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And, everything builds upon itself, because you really wouldn't be able to do what you're doing today in the world if you wouldn't have made the investment in yourself to study pharmacy way back when.
Exactly.
And to really get in the thick of that clinical analysis and science and all of that, which then, kind of fast forward allows you to be this technical expert, an advocate that people need, but they don't know they need. And so hopefully this will open up people's eyes to, not only do you have to do your financial and estate planning for when you age and figure out, are you going to have enough money? And what happens if you go into a nursing home and assisted living and, but really be strategic about it. And like you said, get in front of it when you're still healthy. And you've got those goals of, I want to, age gracefully, and these are the types of things I want to be able to do. I want to ride my bike. I want to play tennis, like whatever it is, and I think that, people are living longer, right? And that last third of your life, you really want to, step into who you fully are and really enjoy life, and take advantage of things that maybe you couldn't take advantage of when you were working 9 to 5.
It's like your reward, right? You've worked so hard for this stage of life. It should be fun. You should be taking, just like I took all those skills and opportunities to create the business, they should take all those skills, because they still have them, but use them in new ways that are more and differently fulfilling.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Michelle, for being on the podcast today. I'm going to make sure that we include all of your contact information, all of your businesses, so people can connect over to you and they can reach out to you to find out how to maintain their relevance as they age. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to meet you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.